I love the Gospel of Mark, and I love it for a lot of reasons. One, the pace is quick, moves through the book really, really quickly. I love that Jesus' words are in every chapter. Every chapter of the book of Mark has some quote, or some chapters are almost all Jesus' words. And I love that it's written in understandable, plain English, so you don't have to be a theologian to understand what Mark is telling us in his gospel. Chapter 7 is broken into 4 parts. There's an encounter between Jesus and the Pharisees. There's a lesson that he teaches his disciples after that. And then there's 2 healing stories, both of which are fascinating. You should read those because they're very unique to the Gospel of Mark. We're going to look at the challenge that the Pharisees placed upon Jesus to his disciples. You see, they observed his disciples eating, and they were eating without washing their hands. And they asked him in verse 5, "Why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders, but eat their bread with unwashed hands?" You see, the Pharisees had created this oral tradition, this oral law that they had elevated to the same importance as God's law that had been revealed to them. And one of those oral traditions was this washing that they had to do every time they were out in public. And this wasn't a hygiene question. This was a question of, why aren't your disciples following our traditions? And Jesus zeroed in on that and revealed to them the hypocrisy of their own traditions in verse 9. He says, "You nicely set aside the commandment of God in order to keep your tradition." He tells them that you've elevated the secondary and ignored the primary. You see, a Pharisee could take all of his wealth and declare it to be a gift to God. They called it Corban. And if he did that, then his parents could not benefit from it in any way at all. And he could enjoy it for the rest of his life. And so his parents could live in destitute, but he could live in wealth. You see, the challenge for us is, have we taken things in our lives that are secondary to the gospel? And have we elevated those? It could be a tradition. It could be a personal preference. It could be anything that we've put in the place of God's word and allowed it to take that primary role in our lives. Question for you and I is, can God reveal those things to us and let us deal with it so that we can be recentered on God's word instead of our own preferences and traditions?